part of our Beyond Betrayal project that so many people have feel cheated by life, others, or God. And we have a whole ministry online that we offer to folks to help them to work through those feelings of betrayal. So that's what we wanted to do today, and we will be right back. There she is, my partner in crime, Karen Johnson. So that how have you been, Karen?
Pretty good.
So,
Not too much to report.
well, that's good. I mean, sometimes not having much to report is a good thing. So,
Yeah.
so you've been doing some thinking about this topic of why God allows pain and suffering, and you
Hmm.
even bought a book on
Yeah.
the topic.
Hmm.
And you said you had a quote that you wanted to share with us from that. So why don't you do that?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to just show you the cover real quick. So this is Why Does God Let Bad Things Happen? Is by Chris Morphew, I guess is how
Okay.
you say his name. But here's a couple of scriptures that it mentions in this part. It says, as we turn to page 3 of the Bible, we find the beginning of an answer. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? He goes, actually, that's not what God had said at all. And the serpent knew it. What God had really said was, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will certainly die. And he says, in the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and good and evil. Now this is all Genesis. It's like for chapter 2 and chapter 3. And he says, side by side in the middle of their new home, God had placed two trees, one that would let his people share in his own eternal life, and another that he warned them would lead to suffering and death. It was this second tree that he told them to not eat from. But that's the one that they chose.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. Like how I was thinking about it, I don't think I've ever really thought about the fact that the one he didn't tell them that they couldn't eat it from it, they could have had the tree of life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
chose the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, here's an interesting thought. And because people get, when we talk about this topic
Hmm.
of, of God and evil, because it's a
Hmm.
complex topic. And,
Right.
and I know many expert theologians and Christian apologists who have delved very deep into this topic. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff, and that's why we're just going to kind of do a survey of some of this information. But there's but we get tangled up sometimes thinking in terms of, well, isn't God complicit some way in pain and suffering entering into our world? Because he didn't have to create creatures with free will, and he didn't have to give this command for
Hmm.
them to observe. And he knew that they were going to violate that command. It's not as if this was a surprise to God.
Hmm.
So now that gets
Yeah.
very complicated, and I am actually going to be talking with an expert on another broadcast that we'll be doing. But here's one way that has helped me in thinking about this.
Hmm.
It is true that God made evil possible,
Right.
but he did not make any evil actual.
Hmm.
Now, here's the difference between the two is that let's suppose that the world's best automobile manufacturer decides to go into business to to manufacture well-built automobiles to the highest standard possible, humanly
Hmm.
possible. When he has made that decision to build well-built automobiles, he's actually made death and destruction possible, because his vehicles may never experience mechanical failures, but the operators of those vehicles may be inattentive or drunk or irresponsible or high on dope nowadays, and so when the automobile manufacturer is bringing a good to humanity, he is also opening up the door to a lot of pain and suffering. But he's not responsible for that pain and suffering. He just has made it possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's helped me a lot when I think through that. We've been looking at some videos that we wanted to share with folks. And we have one that Charles Stanley, he's a pastor who's now dead, but he took up this topic. And so we're going to take a look at his video real quick, and then we'll react to some of the things he says, okay?
All right.
Cool, let's do that.
This is a very interesting question, and one that people have asked down through the centuries, and they will ask until Jesus comes. Why does God allow evil, pain, and suffering when he has the power to prevent it? Well, think about a world without choice. That wouldn't be any life at all. And the fact that you and I have a choice in life means that we have a choice to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And oftentimes, suffering comes with the freedom to choose.
So he, in this particular clip, he says that suffering comes with the freedom to choose. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's true. I mean, the whole thing about what you were talking about with robots and whatnot, if God made humanity puppets and everything, is that then they wouldn't really love him. They would be being forced to love him.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true with the pain and suffering, is that, yeah, if we were all robots or whatever, we wouldn't experience pain and suffering, possibly, but because we make choices that lead us to that.
Yeah.
And you can't have choice without having pain and suffering. But
And
also,
I'm going to put a pin in that and come back to that. You said you
okay,
can't have choice without pain and suffering. But go ahead. Forgive me for interrupting.
that's okay. You also can't have the good stuff that comes with making good choices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. By the way, let me just write it down, because at this stage of my life I have to write stuff down, otherwise I forget it. And
Yeah.
so it just dawned on me while you were talking that with respect to free will,
Yeah.
and free will is really a precondition of true love. But that's not only true with God, it's also true with people.
Right.
Because if we did not possess free will, then we could not freely love our spouses, freely love our children. We would just, and God has given us a window into that type of creature by creating animals. Animals are creatures that are driven by instinct. And even though I know that there are a lot of people that would say, well, animals, my dog loves me. Well, your dog loves the food that you give him, or the comfort, or whatever it is that the dog wants from you. But that animal is driven by instinct. And if we did not have free will, we would just be animals that are driven by instinct.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's true with dogs. Dogs mate, and dogs have families, and dogs hunt and do what dogs do, but none of that is driven by free will. It's driven by the instinct that is a part of that animal's nature.
Mhm.
So, but we are a higher order of animal. I believe it was Aristotle who said that humans are rational animals. And rationality also is it depends on free will. You can't have rational thoughts unless you choose to believe one idea over another.
Yeah.
And so we are rational animals. That's what the human creature is. Angels are pure spirit, and so they're not animals. They don't have that animal nature to them. But I want to just circle back to that one comment where you said something like you can't have free will without without what, pain and suffering. Is that true? Is that, I can't remember exactly what you said. Is that what you, or close to what you said?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you know. And so here's where I would take an exception with that statement: is that in eternity, in glorified eternity, I believe that, and this topic troubled me so deeply for many, probably years, until I sought out a very highly respected Christian philosopher, and I asked him. I said, "Will we have free will in heaven?"
Mhm.
Because I was convinced that that if Adam and Eve fumbled the ball in paradise, that I would definitely be the guy who would fumble fumble the ball in heaven.
Yeah.
And and his answer isn't the way that I appreciate his answer. He really opened up my mind in thinking about it.
Yeah.
But here's the shorthand way that I think about it. Suppose you had cancer, and it was a horrible cancer that not only devoured your body in unpleasant ways, but completely limited your life in so many ways. Then suppose you were cured of cancer, completely cured, and your body was restored to full health.
Yeah.
You would never say in a moment that, oh man, I wish I could go back to those times when I had cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because now you're living, you see, life before cancer, there was a certain amount of innocence to that.
Mhm.
Life during cancer, there's horrible struggle that goes with it. I've known a number of people who, matter of fact, I just officiated a funeral for a fellow who died of cancer. He was diagnosed with cancer, and then 1 month later, he was dead at the age of 55.
Wow.
So, but there's an innocence before cancer, there's the experience of cancer, and then there's post-cancer. We would never say, I wish I could go back. Now, I believe that having gone through the experience of this fallen world, and the longer I live, the more I realize this world is never going to give me what I hope to experience from it.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that heaven is real. I truly
Yeah.
believe that heaven is real. And when I get there, and I possess complete free will, there's going to be two things that will keep me from ever wanting to go back. One would be like, how stupid would it be, you know?
Right.
And number two is how glorious God is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but
But I do believe there's free will in heaven because, I mean,
yeah,
Satan had free will and he chose to turn against God.
yeah, yeah. And that's a topic for another discussion, and you know, and no, and we'll talk about that. But in the meantime, that my wife and I, we had just recently returned from that memorial service for this man, and but while we were there, we decided to stay on for a few days and visit some sites we were interested in seeing in Oklahoma. My wife
Mhm.
initially said, hey, let's go to the Oklahoma City bombing memorial. And I thought, man, what a buzzkill. I don't want to go on any vacation time to a place like that.
Yeah.
But then we did, and I am so glad that
Hmm.
we did. They did such a wonderful job with that memorial, and I even preached about it in a message that I may link in the comments section. But
Hmm.
what I want to do is I just want us to watch a quick video with respect to one of the things that I was thinking about there at the Oklahoma City bombing memorial. So let's watch that right now. Maybe if my buttons will work. Why didn't God stop Timothy McVeigh? I mean, he could have. That he could have stopped him before he purchased the materials that he used for the bomb. He could have stopped him before he drove to the site. He could have even prevented him from ever being born. So why didn't God stop Timothy McVeigh from perpetrating this evil on so many people? Not only 168 people were killed in the blast, but 300, I believe, if my memory serves me, 350 people were injured. And I was reading about some of those injuries, and it's horrible, some of the things that people, how they were wounded. So why didn't God stop Timothy McVeigh? Well, I think there's another question we have to ask. Is that because we always raise that question when it comes to the evil that we deplore, but we seldom raise that question when it comes to the evil that we desire. Why didn't God stop Timothy McVeigh? Well, why doesn't God stop you from breaking people's hearts, from doing evil? If God jumped in and stopped evil whenever it was about to happen, then where would that leave all of us? Something to think about. It is something to think about, isn't it? Yeah. But I'm not hearing your mic. Are you muted?
Yeah.
Okay.
I muted
Well,
myself during the video.
oh, I have you muted from my side. You don't have to worry about that. So,
Gotcha.
okay. But so what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, um, well, I think that it's important for us to be able to have choices, and
Mm-hmm.
if God intervened, like what you said, if God intervened whenever somebody was going to do something bad, that takes away free will, and that also takes away um, like a love that is genuine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So so during these broadcasts, what we want to do is we want to explore this whole idea, because in this Beyond Betrayal group that we have online, that there's just a whole lot of people who have suffered a whole lot of hurt,
Hmm.
and a lot of times they have this question of why does God allow pain and suffering. One of the things that And one of the great things about the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial is that they have two gates that bracket the memorial chairs that are out there that represent the various people who died in the bombing. And one is the Gate of Innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And we all, if we live long enough, we walk through that Gate of Innocence into an experience of suffering and heartbreak. It's inescapable in this life. Jesus says in John 16:33, "In this world you will have trouble," and that's one of the promises of Jesus that that everybody that it never fails. But so we walk through that 901 moment into the 902 tragedy, but then on the far end of the memorial, there's the 903 Gate of Healing. And that's really what we want to do in our Beyond Betrayal program, is help people to reach that place of healing. Hey, before we wrap up on this, Karen, anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about is that I'm really glad that Jesus had free will
Yeah.
and that he chose to give himself up for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And which is interesting because when you think about him making that sacrifice, is that when it comes, because we understand as Christians that Jesus is God with us,
Yeah.
and what's interesting is God didn't just create and observe this creation from the outside. He entered into the inside of that experience
Mm-hmm.
and knew he was a man of sorrows who was acquainted with grief. So I'm going to wrap this up, Karen. Thanks for helping me out with this broadcast. I appreciate all your work and that you're doing to help us to share these programs with others. And then we will, we got a whole, probably about 9 or 10 of these broadcasts that we're going to be doing about God, pain, and suffering. So, friends, thank you for watching today. And I hope that you will join us for our future broadcast when we talk about these important topics, because these are the topics that weigh on our hearts, and not only from an intellectual standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint. And we need to really find our way to get past that. I have a program not only Beyond Betrayal, but I also have a program entitled Mad at God. And I'd be happy to walk you through, if you are struggling in any way with being mad at God for the pain that you've experienced in your life, I'd be happy to work with you to help you to get past that. So that's it for today. I hope to see you again